Today we're talking with one of my former interns at Stark Lane. Eric Qin spent a summer with us before going off to the University of Texas, where he completed an undergrad in management information systems at McCombs Business School, there at the UT campus in Austin. Today he works for one of the big four consulting companies in their strategy arm, helping organizations leverage technology to achieve operational and financial goals. And that's his game. He is a resident expert in leveraging technology. Today we'll talk about some of the positive and the negative attributes of this rise of technology in our daily lives. And Eric's going to share with us, a few practical applications of AI to possibly make your life a little bit easier. Let's get started.
You are now listening to the Stark Lane podcast.
Eric, thanks for coming back. As we dive in, let's talk about some news today. As we record this, I think it's very interesting. Today's June 12th. We have the largest IPO in history kicked off this morning, and I heard on the news 40,000 new millionaires were created by SPACX. People, engineers to cafeteria workers. So did you get a piece of that?
Fortunately, I did not, but it is certainly always exciting thing to think about, especially the combination between SpaceX being a space travel company as well as XAI, the AI sector. So it's a interesting blend of different technologies that are popping around right now.
And not to mention the entire Starlink network falls under that company's umbrella as well. So
Right.
I think I watched the CFO's interview by Morgan Stanley pre-IPO. It was really interesting. They were talking about all the different business lines and what they do. And I think this appropriately fits in today's episode because, just like Tesla many years ago, they claimed to be a technology company that also happened to sell cars. Well, I think that is held true. They've done a really good job innovating, releasing patents for the good of humanity, stuff like that. And one of the first things the CFO said, the longtime CFO of SpaceX, he said that we're a technology company. We just happen to launch rockets. And I thought, okay, well, that's pretty cool. So they're still branding themselves as a technology company.
Right. It's a good way to put it. And you actually have Starlink set up at your ranch, is that correct?
So everything you're seeing now, I'm running off one Starlink residential grade Starlink antenna. I have, my barn's lit up, my gym, the entire homestead, the office. It's insane. I've got YouTube videos on that. I'm not going to post those on the Stark Lane channel, but yeah, I'm a fan of Starlink for sure.
More access to different rural areas.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the SpaceX folks are tapped into that. There was $250 billion in demand on $75 billion in available stock. So I think everyone put in bids, but I feel like I did well because I got about a third of what I requested, what I bid on. But still, I'm just glad to have it, glad to be a part of what they're doing. I think it's pretty neat.
Yeah, I think 2026 is especially going to be an interesting year for technology and IPOs, right? Is there any other major company you're interested in? I know Stripe, Figma, a few other big startups are also coming into their IPO scene. Anthropic too, the main one, main AI company. Is there all things you're looking forward to?
You'd be probably better dialed into that than I am. We're doing a little more health tech these days. Stark Lane is. By the way, today the Modern Healthcare list came out. We were 2025 28th largest executive search firm in healthcare by Modern Healthcare magazine by number of SVP level and above non-RN executives placed. And I think that's interesting because we've been playing in health tech. We've been playing in technology and beyond healthcare. So man, so fortunate to still be on that list. But I think I'm always going to keep like a foot and a half planted in healthcare because tech is it's a different world, man.
Sure. And I think the main topic today, as you mentioned, technology in different sectors. I mean, did you want to talk a little bit more about the data centers and some of the new legislation going on?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, actually let's talk about, I look at our generational differences, right? You're about the same age as my daughter, and I believe I am a tech forward person. But after getting to know you as an intern at Stark Lane and watching your studies at the University of Texas, and now being with, one of the largest consulting companies on planet Earth, consulting in the bridging business and technology, I realized that I am borderline ignorant. And one of the things I find fascinating is that because I don't have the access or because I'm not making the effort, and I think about that frequently because in Texas, we are seeing a lot of legislation proposed to like ban cell phones and technology utilization in schools during school hours, like completely taking away cell phones and stuff like that, which I have mixed feelings about that. When I think about where we are from a technology perspective in society, I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Right? It's a interesting time to be. And firstly, I'll give you a perspective as a recently graduated student. I think the reality is for many of the students, not to call us out, but if we are using our phone in class, oftentimes it's not actually to engage with the material. So I see the big argument a lot of educators are having to remove some of these personal devices because they can certainly become a distraction from the core education focus. At the same time, and I know we've been talking about technology, it's becoming almost impossible to escape technology, not only in school, but also in the workforce. As you can tell right now, we're all using our laptops to even have this conversation. So not being able to use these modern technologies, I think is going to be a huge disadvantage for students. But if I had to give one coherent takeaway, I think legislators are taking the right move to ban more of these personal device uses, as long as they are able to provide maybe school-based technology access like laptops or iPads, where you can still experiment with these different tools and teach students how to use them in the modern workforce.
It's such a tricky balance, a quality education, but also exposure to everyday technology that you need to be competitive. It's hard. So I appreciate your perspectives there.
Absolutely. And I think it really does differ based on the level of education too. I know most of these legislation are targeted primarily for public high school and below. So for these younger students, I think it makes more sense to potentially have a little bit more control versus at the university level where students are almost expected to have their own independence and exploratory habits. So I think doing the right move is to focus on firstly these high schools and below.
AI is evolving so rapidly. I think a big driver there and a big fear by legislators and by parents and the generations that are most concerned about the quality of education is that the fear that AI will take away drive of an individual or people will rely on a technology to do something that they should know how to should understand and know how to do themselves, and that they might be leveraging AI from their phones so they don't have to think and don't have to learn. So I don't know. I think
Yeah,
that's
I don't have a good answer for that either. And I think it's going to be scary to think about children that grow up with access to AI from a very young age. Because as you mentioned, maybe that will take away some of their critical processing skills. I even think to myself, and I think the big argument is, why would you learn how to do math when you have access to a calculator on your phone? Well, I don't think that's not necessarily apt because still in school, I learned how to do math. I still learned economics. I still learned statistics. These are all very useful frameworks to think about. And a calculator is just a tool to help understand how to process things more effectively.
yeah, it still blows my mind. I can literally just ask my phone about price optimization. And if you've ever taken an economics course and you've done a price optimization strategy and you pull data and you've done those formulas by hand that take up 4 or 5 sheets of paper, I see the attraction. I see why there's some fear that people might not want to do that.
Right, right. And I think AI can even fill out that entire strategy for you. Just one simple sentence prompt. How do we look at price optimization? Got this whole list down. So it is certainly an interesting area to be thinking about.
So let's talk more about AI. How is AI changing?
And the technology is growing extremely fast. As you can tell, if we even think about 1 year back, And the level of AI that we're using compared to today is so drastically different. The comparison I always, once again, like to think about is Moore's Law. And when you think about computer processing, the historical anecdote was every year the processing power doubled by nearly 2x. I think we're seeing a very similar trend in AI where intelligence and the autonomy of these tools is almost doubling every single year. And as we talked about IPOs too, Anthropic, one of the largest AI providers, recently launched their new Claude Fable model. Have you seen that at all, Ryan?
I haven't. No, tell me about it.
Yeah, so it's actually their line of most advanced AI models. It's based on what's called their Mythos model, which is locked behind specific government and select users only because apparently it's so powerful that it can even crack into some of the most contemporary cybersecurity tools that we have available. So they don't want that going out to the public. But they did just release what I mentioned, Fable, which is a more uh, controlled version of the model, so to say, which is now available to the public and for testing. So just seeing how that technology is growing, I think is pretty insane.
So Fable, is that a technology that learns as it goes and grows, learns and
I don't
adapts?
think I don't think yet. The argument is
Okay.
that AI is getting very close to what's known as recursive learning, which is
Mhm.
where the model is able to train itself. But I don't think we've gone quite there yet. But if you're familiar with the latest ChatGPT model, 5.5, it's essentially a version of that on steroids, if you will.
I've used ChatGPT. My go-to is Grok. Ara and I are
Right.
developing a relationship where I ask, anything and everything. I still use a lot of search, and that's not what AI is designed to do. It's just so handy in terms of identifying obscure research data, which I find awesome. I do complex calculations with it, but I haven't been as heavily dependent on AI as a lot of other people I know.
Right. I think it is slow to adopt as a new technology. And on that conversation, would you like me to just dive into some very tactical things we can share with the audience about how they can better use AI today?
Yeah, because I think there's a common misconception that, AI, is a stronger search tool or it's a great way to build a resume or enhance a photo. That's what most people use it for. And by the way, on the resume front, everybody out there, do not use ChatGPT for your resumes. Employers are starting to pick up on that. They notice it, and if they smell a ChatGPT resume, they're going to throw it away. I've one health tech company in Dallas in particular. The chief people officer told me, he said, "No, this is a ChatGPT resume. We're not going to talk to this individual."
Right. And if you are even using AI to detect AI, so if you think you're smart enough to get away with it, well, they probably have a system on the back end to also detect if you are using AI. So be aware of that.
What can we do? Like, how can the average everyday professional leverage AI?
Let's do it. So I actually wanted to talk about this in three different levels of AI access. Firstly, at a very basic level with some of the tools that you're probably already using, like Grok and ChatGPT. Second, I wanted to talk a little bit more about some advanced tools and integrations AI actually has available. And thirdly, there's actually something really cool now called AI harnesses, which are more specific plugins that use AI model but can do more advanced things. So if I can actually go ahead and share my screen, I can maybe show off some of these different things.
There we go. Cool.
Okay, let's do it. So you can see my screen. This is Google Gemini, which is, of course, Google's main AI offering right now. It's actually very deeply integrated into their entire work platform. So even if you're using something like Gmail or Google Drive, you're likely already using some of their AI features. What I really want to highlight is firstly the chatbot. So these, of course, are interfaces, Ryan, I'm sure you're very familiar with, but how do we actually most effectively think about prompting AI to get our responses? And it's actually a very simple format. Is there a specific topic or idea that you have in mind, Ryan? Is there something you're trying to get out of AI today? Can you even do like maybe something relevant to the SpaceX IPO?
Yeah, let's look at let's talk about the projection of the company's value or market cap. Let's look at the projection of the company's market cap over 5 years.
Okay. So I'm going to enter a very simple prompt, and in a second, I'll show you the difference. So let's just say, what's the projection of SpaceX market cap over the next 5 years. So, pretty straightforward response. SpaceX is undergoing a massive financial evolution. The company officially transitioned from the private markets to the public arena. So, talking about some of the new IPO information, which you can see here is some really great integrations where Gemini is automatically searching Google. So, to your point about search features, Ryan, these are all directly integrated in the tool already. And 5 year market cap projection, let's see what we have here. It's pretty
Whew.
great. It actually built out different cases for us.
Wow.
So can become a billionaire in a couple of years, Ryan.
Nice. Look at that base
But
case. That just blows my mind. Trillion with a T. I mean, that is just hard to wrap my mind around.
even in the bear
Trillion with a T.
case,
Wow. Good Lord.
here.
Still.
Oh, so we have a pretty in-depth here, some of the core drivers, infrastructure, why Wall Street is split, so different valuation risks. And you can see this is a pretty great response from AI. What I also want to highlight now is what if we add an extra layer to our prompt to make AI into an even more effective tool? So here's a general prompt structure I like to use. Firstly, we talk about its role. Then we think about the context. Then we think about our goal. So let's run with this now with the same exact idea of evaluating SpaceX. So for the role, let's use AI to be a financial analyst. So you are a expert financial analyst, specialized in deal evaluations. The context is, of course, we are trying to understand the valuation of SpaceX. We are focused on understanding
And if you do not see
the
the video version of this episode, Eric is typing into Gemini as we speak. And he's telling
right.
Gemini that you are an expert financial analyst specialized in deal valuations. We are focused on understanding the new SpaceX IPO valuation. Help me build out a 5 year projection.
Okay, so let's run with this. A little bit more information now, but ultimately achieving the same goal of trying to help evaluate the SpaceX IPO. Let's see what we get now. Okay, here we go. As you can see, we have a little bit more in-depth information here. We actually have a projected CAGR, implied target valuation, and a breakdown of the different case implications. So what we get here, and a final strategic takeaway. But what I really want to showcase is that if you are able to prompt AI more effectively with a simple context structure of what's your role, what's your context, and what's your goal, you're likely able to get a little bit more effective of a result from AI. If you don't give it as much context, then it's going to make a few assumptions. And the way I like to think about it is AI is your intern. You're not going to just give it a task and tell it to run. You're going to probably give it a step-by-step instruction of how to actually get to that end goal we're looking for.
Good point. Aura and Grok are they're my interns. Got it. Gemini, intern. Cool.
Exactly. Okay, so that's level one, prompt engineering. How do we get AI to actually get to our goals? Number two, I actually want to showcase is with tool integrations now. So with Gemini, because this is a Google product, it's actually very deeply integrated into your workspace already. So what I want to showcase over here is what's called a cron job, CRON, a cron job. What it essentially does is automates a recurring task you may have daily. So I'll pull up this example. This is actually a real tool that I've been using for myself. I actually just tell AI this simple prompt right here. Hey, can you summarize my email inbox every morning from the previous day to the time you're seeing this action? Format it as number one, what's the executive summary? Number two, do I have any action items? And number three, can you break it down contact by contact? And this automatically runs every morning. I think I set it at 9 a.m. Central Time. As you can see here, for the morning of June 12th, I have my executive summary. My inbox has been pretty quiet over the last 24 hours. There's not a whole lot of action items besides reviewing an email over here. And of course, here's a contact breakdown from the one email I did receive. So a very simple integration actually looks directly at my Gmail account and pulls this data for me to help understand if I have any critical emails I need to respond to.
You are the only person I know that got an email from MIT Sloan admissions for their MBA program this morning.
Oh man. Very simple to set up, and what the takeaway I want from the audience to get out of this is that AI is actually really great at integrating into some of the existing software and tools that you do have. It could be as something as simple as Gmail to something as complex as even creating a PowerPoint for you. You can go ahead and use that prompting structure to connect with these tools, go ahead and simplify how you work.
Very cool. The integrations, I know that Grok will integrate with Outlook, and I haven't used any of those integrations at this point. I've been, to your point, I don't think I've necessarily known exactly what I want to do with it, so I don't know how to direct or how to prompt AI properly. So this is helpful. Gave me some ideas.
Right. And I also want to add on to that because I think at the same time that we are very excited about this technology, it's important to be aware of some of the risks. Because, for example, if I give AI full access to my Gmail, well, maybe it could go ahead and send out a message to a friend or contact that isn't necessarily something I'd want going out. So it's important to be aware of how we are using these technologies and put some of the brakes on so it doesn't have full access to things that could be more sensitive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can do 100 things right, but if you do one thing wrong and it's really wrong, you're it can create a lot of damage.
Exactly
People
that.
should be aware of that. One email can definitely ruin a career. You send the wrong email to the wrong person at the wrong time and it says the wrong thing, you will ruin your career. You can blame AI all you want, but no.
Yeah. Ultimately, we're still the drivers. AI is just a tool.
Yeah, right on.
Okay. And number three, I want to showcase what are called harnesses. And essentially, these are interfaces that we use around the AI model. Of course, Gemini and these chatbots are harnesses, but they're more simple chat box style interfaces where the goal is really to be able to ask simple questions. It's actually my home server that I built out recently, Ryan. Oops.
I just installed a 48 terabyte server in my office here to store more of my own data, mostly for video editing and whatnot, because it's so much information and so much data that you have to store, that you have to use, and you have to have a certain speed to be able to process everything. But it just blows my mind because, 20 years ago, when you're talking about 48 terabytes, people, it was just hard to comprehend. You'd need a data center to hold that much data.
At the same time, hardware costs are getting a lot more expensive, partly because of AI and the huge demand for data centers. But I know we can get to that in a minute. But okay, here's a tool called Hermes Agent. This is a AI harness that you can actually install to a server so you can continue to run automated processes without having to live on your desktop.
Hmm.
So an example that I'm using is also very similar to the default email contact, or sorry, the email summarizer that I have in Gemini. I actually built out a scheduled cron job. So same idea, but this will essentially look at my entire email newsletters from Axios and Morning Brew and create a more comprehensive summary and takeaway section for me. And it's actually listed over here. And it goes ahead and breaks down my entire newsletter summary. So I don't have to read all of that complex information. But the real
Yeah.
power behind these harnesses is that it's able to more deeply integrate with your existing ecosystem. For example, if you use something like Hermes Agent, it can actually see the files on your computer and play around with those directly and integrate with things like your Google Workspace to be able to create these completely automated workflows where you don't have to touch anything at all. Just give AI simple prompts and it's able to spin that out all for you.
Very cool. What's the cost for something like that?
It's actually very much dependent because Hermes doesn't include the AI model itself. You actually use what's called an API key, which is connected to either a cloud model or something you run locally. So if you run it locally, then you don't actually have to pay anything at all. The AI is running on your computer hardware. If you use something like an API key, it's almost like a pay-per-use system where usually it's charged by millions of tokens, and there's a set rate for that.
I still think that scares me. If somebody else owns the technology and I'm renting the technology and they have access to everything the AI accesses, which is my entire life, it just, I think I'm a little slower to adopt there than I think a lot of the technology forward people.
Right. And I think that's an important highlight as well, especially for more data sensitive industries like healthcare, where we
Yeah.
shouldn't just be plugging in sensitive patient data to AI models without understanding the ramifications. I think there's still a lot of growth in that area. But as I mentioned, there's actually what are called locally hosted models, which are AI systems that you can now run on your own computer infrastructure that don't have to leave your network at all. So you completely own all of it, and you can actually send more sensitive data information with full confidence that it's not going to be something accessed publicly.
JLL put out some really interesting information on data centers. The In 2025, last year, 25% of the workload of data centers was allocated to, AI processes and tools. By 2030, it's going to be 50% of the workload of data centers, which is crazy. And these data centers, I think people don't realize it's not like a shipping container with a bunch of servers in it. We're talking the average size of a data center in the state of Texas is between 100 and 300 acres, and that's average. There's a standard deviation of huge. I don't know what the standard deviation is, but some of the big ones are like really big, like state of Rhode Island big.
Right. And I think the comparison was one data center could use enough electricity to run up to 100 hospitals. It's crazy to think about the entire resource draw that these new systems are using.
Resources, water. Okay, now we're on the data center kick. I got to pull this up. I'm going to share my screen now. This is cleanview.co. We have 90 operating data centers in the state of Texas and 165 planned. The brown dots are those in existence already running, and the green ones are the ones planned. I mean, that is a ton of data centers. And if we're talking about, you know, doubling the data center count, actually more than that, what is it? 180 would be double. So yeah, if we're talking about doubling the data center count and then actually doubling the AI workload over the next few years, I mean, that's significant technological advancement.
That's right. And I think the huge argument is that AI is going to be able to replace a lot of the more manual processes that we're currently using. So I think that's the huge draw. But another side to that is that AI workloads are actually becoming more and more complex as models like Fable that we were just talking about are growing more complex to use. So it's a larger draw on compute power, which requires more data centers to even be able to host these systems.
What's the good side of data centers, from social sentiment? All I'm hearing is or what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing is a lot of data center hate because I live out like the Schulenburg, Texas is the closest town to us, and their claim to fame, their slogan is middle of nowhere, halfway to everywhere. And the people that move out here, they want to shut the door behind them and they want to preserve everything as it is, the way it was, the way it's always been. They don't want anything changing. And then you talk about putting in a 300-acre data center that's screaming at 90 decibels all day, every day. And it starts consuming a lot of water. And when you're in a drought, that's a bad thing. So I don't know. I hear all the bad. What's the good?
Man, okay. So I think the good part is that fortunately or unfortunately, technology is becoming more integrated into our life, whether we like it or not. So if we think about something as simple as your Apple Watch or fitness trackers, these all likely send data directly to cloud data centers to be able to host and track your personal information. So having access to more data centers likely means higher speed, and control for some of the technology that you're already using. And of course, the other side of that is a lot of these data centers will now be hosting AI. So maybe some of the more powerful models will be able to be accessed by you more locally for your use.
When I think about the cloud, I'm much more comfortable thinking about like big white puffy clouds in the sky without wires that aren't screaming at 90 decibels. It's
Agreed,
much
completely
easier to
agreed.
envision that than a, 300 acre,
Giant
data center
fortress of
with
metal.
fortress of metal. Yeah. What is the social and public sentiment for the younger generation, the freshly out of school, going into the workforce, probably don't own homes and ranches next door to data centers at this point.
I don't think people fully understand the ramifications yet. Even for myself, looking at this new development, it's like genuinely a completely mixed bag. On the one side, as we were just talking about, there's likely going to be some upsides to the technology and existing tools that we are already using. On the flip side, also, as we've been talking about, huge drains on our resources, likely going to be a huge pull on our water system, our electric grid, which we've already know Texas is having struggles with. And then for prices of electricity, because if these data centers are using up all of our existing grid and traffic and resources, well, then for residences, it's probably going to be more expensive. So for new undergrads like me coming into the workforce, I don't have a good answer for you. I think it is something that we're going to have to look forward to seeing how it develops, and likely is going to be a mixed bag of how things turn out.
Man, I totally identify with the haters. I get it. I can empathize with them. I understand it. It frustrates me. But at the same time, I do like standing here at my desk in front of three monitors. And through the course of a day, I can do the work of 20 to 30 people if I do leverage AI. So, I mean, there are two sides to the coin. So I think we're just going to have to see. We're just going to have to
Right.
wait and see how this thing shakes out.
Yeah. I think it's a funny argument that a lot of these data centers are making too, that they're going to create more jobs for people because they need employees running their staff. Um, but who knows if they'll be replaced by AI by that point.
Well, Eric, man, thanks for coming on today. I really appreciate you walking us through, some of the practical applications of AI, things that people can do every day. I know a lot of executives are super busy and, most senior executives today are operating without, multiple administrative support people like they did 15 or 20 years ago. And so leveraging AI, I think, is going to be part of the game. It's a necessary evil or, something you embrace. I don't know, but it's necessary.
Yeah, we'll just have to look forward to the future to see what happens with everything.
All right, Eric, let's get back to work.
This has been the Stark Lane podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and wherever you find the programs to elevate your career and your passions. Now, get back to work.